The sky was heavy with clouds when the call went out across the valley. A single horn, carved from bone, echoed through the hills, deep and trembling. The river clan gathered, drawn by instinct, by hunger. For 3 days the smoke of their fires had grown thin. The hunt for small game had yielded little. Now scouts had returned with news. A mammoth had been seen beyond the frozen ridge, grazing near the marshlands. The word mammoth was not yet spoken, but they all knew the meaning, the great beast, the mountain that moved. To hunt it meant danger. To fail meant death. Aru stood among the hunters, gripping his spear. His heart beat fast, not from fear alone, but from the fire that burned within him since the last hunt, since the bison's fall, since Lina's eyes had met his across the firelight. He wanted to prove himself, not only as a hunter, but as something more. Something new. The clan's leader, old Toru, stepped forward. His shoulders were wide, his face marked with scars that told stories older than memory. He raised his hand to the sky. The gesture meant the Great One calls us. Beside Aru, Lina and the women prepared the gathering pouches, flints, herbs, water skins. Her eyes caught his once more. No words passed, but the silence between them was heavy with meaning. Return, her gaze said. Do not let the dark take you. Aru touched the small bone charm around his neck, a tooth from the bison he had slain. He believed it held strength, or perhaps just hope. Then, without another glance, he followed the hunters into the wind. They moved as a single line through the valley, feet sinking into mud and frost. The air smelled of rain and wild grass. The world was immense, endless plains rolling toward mist-covered mountains. Overhead, flocks of birds moved like shifting smoke. By midday, the hunters reached the ridge. Below it, the earth opened into a wide marshland. And there it was. The mammoth. It stood alone near the water's edge, enormous, shaggy, its tusks curved like pale moons. The creature's breath rose in steaming clouds, and its cry shook the air. Around it, the grass bent under its weight. Even Toru hesitated. The beast was not prey, it was power made flesh. But hunger makes courage. The hunters formed a half-circle, spears raised. They whispered with gestures, silent language of fingers and eyes. You move left. You drive it toward the pit. We strike together. They had dug the pit days before, a trap hidden by branches and grass. If they could lure the beast that far, it might fall. If not, it would crush them all. Aru's hands trembled as he lifted his spear. He could feel the weight of every life behind him, the children, the elders, Lina. He breathed once steady. Then he gave the signal. They charged. The mammoth turned, trumpeting in rage. It swung its tusks, scattering men like dry leaves. One hunter was thrown, his body broken before he hit the ground. Another spear splintered against the beast's hide. Aru ducked beneath a sweeping tusk, rolling in the mud, rising again. He hurled his spear with all his strength. The tip struck deep into the creature's shoulder. The mammoth bellowed, blood dark against its fur. It stumbled, turning toward him, eyes wild, ancient, filled with fury. For a heartbeat, time froze. Aru stared into those eyes and saw the reflection of his own soul, small, fragile, defiant. The beast charged. Aru ran. The ground shook beneath him. He dove aside just as the mammoth thundered past, straight toward the trap. A roar, a crash, and the earth gave way. The mammoth fell. The world went silent, except for its heavy, labored breathing. The hunters surrounded the pit. They stood still for a long time, watching the creature struggle. There was awe in their eyes, not triumph. To end such life was not glory, it was necessity. Toru stepped forward, muttered a low sound that meant forgive. Then he thrust his spear downward, ending the beast's suffering. A hush fell over the clan. The wind carried the last breath of the mammoth into the gray sky. By nightfall, they had returned victorious. The fire burned high, and the smell of roasted meat filled the cave. The clan sang, not with words, but with rhythm, drumming hands against stone, stamping feet, the rise and fall of voices that echoed the beating of hearts. Aru sat apart from the noise, staring into the fire. His body ached, But inside him something was awakening, something deeper than survival. He thought of the mammoth's eyes, of the storm of life and death he had felt in that moment. And he thought of Lina. A soft touch on his shoulder drew him back. It was her. Lina knelt beside him, the firelight dancing on her face. She offered him a piece of meat, warm and dripping with fat. He took it, smiling faintly. Their fingers brushed, brief, electric. Then she reached into her pouch and drew something out, a small piece of ivory from the mammoth's tusk. She placed it in his palm. Her expression was solemn. The gesture meant remember. Aru understood. He took a sharp flint and began carving upon the ivory. Not a picture. He could not yet imagine that, but lines, curves, shapes that felt like what he had seen. The swirl of the beast's power, the chaos of the hunt, the trembling of his own heart. When he was done, Lina traced the marks with her fingers, then touched them to her chest. Two humans, before language, creating meaning. The fire crackled. Around them, the clan's music grew louder, drums and cries blending into the pulse of the night. Above, stars shone like ancient eyes. Aru looked up and whispered a sound, barely formed, shaped by breath and wonder. Li! Lina turned to him, puzzled. He pointed to her, repeated, Li, na! Her eyes widened. For the first time, her name had been spoken. A sound born of love. A sound born of being human. She smiled, tears glinting in the firelight, and answered with a whisper of her own. Aru. In that moment, beneath the stars, surrounded by smoke and the scent of the mammoth, the first names were born. And the wind carried those names into the dark, echoing across the valley. Soft, eternal, human,